The deadliest wounds aren't inflicted by weapons, Chief Walker used to say during our survival training off the Alaskan coast. His scared face, weathered by decades of Arctic missions, would grow somber. They come from the people you'd take a bullet for. Those words haunted me now, as my satellite phone lit up with my son's message. The school's compromised. Need you here ASAP. Below me, the Jayhawk helicopter carved through dense coastal fog, its twin rotors fighting the stubborn Maine weather. The rocky shoreline materialized through the mist like a forgotten memory. This stretch of coast had called to me 15 years ago, fresh out of the SEAL's elite underwater operations unit. Not for its pristine waters or lucrative diving spots, but for its potential to house something meaningful. A training facility that would forge the next generation of underwater rescue specialists. Sarah had seen the vision before I could even fully articulate it. Some men, she'd said, her eyes bright with conviction, are built to leave footprints, not to follow them. This school isn't just your next mission, it's your legacy. She threw herself into it completely, transforming from a supportive wife into an exceptional diving instructor. Together we built something remarkable, or so I thought. Now, sir. Thompson's granite features were etched with concern as I stepped onto the landing pad. My XO's squared shoulders and ramrod posture couldn't hide the tension in his voice. After countless deep water missions together, I could read him like a depth gauge. Something had fractured while I was gone, something fundamental. The look in his eyes triggered the same gut-churning tension I'd felt before recovering bodies from sunken vessels. But this was different, more personal, more toxic. Status report, I commanded, tossing my Arctic gear in the waiting jeep. My stomach knotted as I asked the questions I dreaded. What's the situation at the school? Where's Ryan? Thompson's fingers drummed against his keys, a nervous tell from a man who'd never flinched under enemy fire. It's about your wife and Mike, sir. They've repurposed the facility. It's not a diving school anymore. Not really. Mike. Each letter of his name felt like nitrogen bubbles in my bloodstream. My oldest friend since SEAL training. My most trusted instructor. The man who'd shared his emergency air supply with me at 130 feet when everything went sideways. We'd survived that day because we operated as one unit. Our trust absolute and unquestioning. Fill me in. I kept my voice steady, the same tone I'd used to command rescue operations in hurricane conditions. Every detail, Thompson, no matter how ugly. Each word he spoke felt like descending into darker waters. The school, my life's work after the SEALs, had mutated into something unrecognizable. A front for an elaborate smuggling operation that made my stomach turn. It started small, seemingly innocent special deliveries through our offshore training routes, utilizing our dive operations for discreet transportation. Then came the new investors, with their offshore accounts and shadowy backgrounds. State-of-the-art equipment appeared far beyond our legitimate budget. The abandoned underwater caves where we'd conducted training exercises became transfer points. My pristine service record, my reputation built through years of decorated SEAL operations, all weaponized into the perfect smokescreen. We're talking 7 figures per shipment. Thompson lowered his voice like he was discussing classified intel. I tried digging, but this goes deep. Local law enforcement's been bought off, customs officials are on their payroll. But that's not the worst part. His voice trailed off, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us like heavy surge. Say it. The words tasted like salt water. Sarah, she was in on it from the beginning. Before you left for the Arctic, she and Mike, they're not just business partners. His phone appeared, displaying a photo that hit harder than any depth charge. The anchor room, our special place where Sarah and I had celebrated every anniversary. She wore that designer dress I'd brought back from Milan. Mike's hand rested on her shoulder with familiar intimacy. And her eyes. They held that same sparkle she used to reserve for me. The cold spread through my chest like a deep-water thermocline. That sudden temperature drop that can shock even experienced divers. 15 years of marriage. 3 kids raised together. Countless training dives, we've been the East Coast premier teaching team. All those years, she drilled into students the sacred rule. Never abandon your dive buddy. All while she was, what about Ryan? The question that had been crushing my lungs since his message. Kids stumbled onto one of their catches during a training dive. Some high-value containers stashed in the northern cave system. Smart boy. Knew something was off immediately. Tried reaching you, tried reaching me. While I was testing new rescue protocols in the Arctic Circle, limited to emergency comms only, my son was watching his world implode. A 15-year-old diving prodigy who'd practically grown up in our training pool, who saw our instructors as extended family. Give me your phone. I dialed Ryan's number, but Sarah answered. Honey, you're back early. We've been. Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness, that honeyed tone she used when covering something up. In the past, it meant hidden shopping sprees or surprise party plans. Now, where's Ryan? At the school, training. You know how dedicated he's become. Takes after his father. Stop. My tone could cut through steel, the same voice that commanded critical operations. Don't you dare talk about him. I'm heading to the facility. Darling, maybe come home first. I can prepare your favorite. She faltered, my silence telling her the game was over. I ended the call. The Arctic chill in my chest transformed into focused rage. The kind that keeps you functioning when your equipment fails at depth and raw training is all you have left. I need both that fury and those instincts now. The school, I ordered Thompson. Brief me on everything en route, every player, every detail, every Dan coffee run. Because it's time to sanitize this operation. The Jeep carved through the coastal mist, while Thompson laid out a mission brief that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My diving school, built on the foundation of 20 years of military service, had become a sophisticated smuggling hub. What started as special arrangements for moving undocumented cargo morphed into a full-scale criminal enterprise. New consultants materialized from the shadows, bringing with them military-grade underwater propulsion devices and advanced sonar systems, hardware that went far beyond legitimate diving operations. The maze of underwater caves where we'd conducted rescue training became a network of dead drops. My reputation, built through years of distinguished service and countless rescued lives, now served as the perfect cover story. The numbers would make a cartel boss blush. Thompson's voice carried the weight of compromised integrity. Deep-pocketed players, top-tier gear, clockwork operation. Local authorities look the other way. Customs officials conveniently lose paperwork. But here's what keeps me up at night. I gripped the armrest, feeling the leather crack under my fingers. In 15 years of spec ops, I'd seen every shade of betrayal. But this was personal treachery elevated to an art form. They engineered this whole thing, Commander. Sarah and Mike, their relationship. It predates your Arctic deployment. The timing, the equipment purchases, the new training protocols, all of it was orchestrated. The photo he showed me burned worse than nitrogen narcosis. The anchor room, our anniversary tradition for 15 years. Sarah wore that versus dress I'd surprised her with last Christmas. Mike's hand rested on her bare shoulder with practiced familiarity. But it was her expression that hit hardest, that look of complete contentment I used to see across the breakfast table. A storm of memories crashed over me like a collapsing pressure wave. 15 years building a life together. 3 kids who grew up breathing compressed air and dreaming of deep water. Countless students we'd certified together. Sarah and I were legendary in the technical diving community. She drilled the sacred diver's code into every trainee. Your buddy's life depends on your loyalty, all while planning the perfect betrayal. Ryan? The question burned in my throat like seawater. Poor kid found their stash during advanced cave training. Hidden compartments in the northern system, loaded with high-value merchandise. Smart enough to know something was wrong, tried reaching out. While I was testing experimental rescue protocols north of the Arctic Circle, limited to emergency frequencies, my son watched his world disintegrate. At 15, Ryan was already pushing the limits of technical diving, practically living in our training facilities. The school wasn't just a business to him, it was home, and our staff was family. I punched his number into Thompson's phone. Sarah answered on the second ring. Darling, what a surprise. We weren't expecting. Her voice dripped artificial warmth, that carefully modulated tone she'd perfected over years of hiding things. Usually small deceits, an expensive purchase, a planned surprise. Now it masked something far darker. Where's our son? In the pool, of course. Advanced rescue scenarios. He's becoming quite the expert, just like his. Enough. The word cut through her pretense like a rescue shear through a tangled line. I'm inbound to the facility. Sweetheart, let's meet at home first. I've been planning your welcome home din. Dead silence met her words, the kind that tells you your cover is blown more effectively than any accusation. I terminated the call, feeling that familiar combat focus crystallize, the same mental state that keeps you functional when you're out of air at 130 feet, and training is all you have left. That clarity would serve me well now. The school, I ordered Thompson, and on everything. Every meeting, every shipment, every coffee run. It's time to execute a purge. The Jeep accelerated through the thickening fog as my mind mapped out the coming confrontation. Not a plunge into dark water this time, but into something far murkier, Betrayal's depths. And the decompression sickness from this dive would be the least of my concerns. The facility materialized through the coastal haze, a state-of-the-art complex of reinforced concrete and marine-grade glass, funded by 2 decades of military pension and legitimate diving contracts. My pride, my legacy, the future I'd planned to pass down to Ryan. Now it loomed before us like a decompression chamber hiding the bends, pristine on the outside, deadly within. Through the massive windows of the training pool, I watched my son executing rescue maneuvers with textbook precision. Every movement calculated, each gesture refined, a natural talent surpassing many seasoned professionals. At 15, he had already mastered skills that took most divers years to develop. Now this toxic revelation threatened not just his career path, but his fundamental trust in humanity. "Dad," Ryan surfaced and stripped off his gear, his face a complex mix of relief and apprehension. "I knew you'd come back early. I documented everything, got it all on the underwater camera." I embraced him, feeling the tension coiled in his shoulders. Still a kid, but carrying himself like a veteran operator. My legacy, my continuation, and now my primary reason for approaching this situation with surgical precision rather than explosive force. "Command Center," I nodded to Thompson hovering near the entrance like a safety diver. "Show me what you got." My office still carried that distinct blend of neoprene and sea salt. The walls displayed proud milestones, my SEAL team, our first graduating class, countless dives with Sarah. The sleek new laptop on the desk screamed money, definitely not standard instructor equipment. Here, Ryan retrieved a flash drive hidden inside his regulator maintenance kit. Found this 2 weeks ago during CADE navigation training. We were practicing tight passages in the North Tunnel system when I caught a strange reflection in one of the side chambers. The footage, though murky from the cave's turbid water, revealed the operation with disturbing clarity. Rows of professional-grade shipping containers camouflaged as decommissioned equipment. Military spec mounting systems, quick-release mechanisms, phosphorescent navigation markers, this was no amateur setup. I didn't get it at first. My son's voice trembled with controlled emotion. "Showed Mom thinking, but she brushed it off as training props. Thing is, Dad, I'm not blind." The midnight support boats, Mike's private lessons, with those sketchy guys. Then these new instructors started showing up, all jumpy, tatted up like gang members. Nothing like our usual staff. Ex-Delta Force operators, Thompson added quietly. Ran backgrounds through my contacts. All have specialized maritime infiltration experience. Hired guns with underwater warfare expertise. I scrolled through the flash drive's contents, feeling my combat instincts surge. Photos, shipping manifests, diving schedules. My teenage son had conducted a professional-grade reconnaissance operation at considerable personal risk. Mom's different. Ryan stared at his dive boots, fists clenched. Like she's someone else now. Always talking about financial opportunities, lifestyle upgrades. When I mentioned you, he swallowed hard. "She said you were stuck in the past with your outdated principles." "They're planning something major." Thompson approached the nautical chart dominating the wall. "Past week saw heavy equipment deliveries, upgraded air systems. Overheard talk about some VIP client." I opened the final file, surveillance footage from the restaurant. Sarah and Mike occupied a corner booth, lost in their own world. Their hands intertwined on the table, heads close together. Then she kissed him, casual, intimate, like a long-established routine. "I'm sorry, Dad." Ryan's hand found my shoulder. "You needed to know." The screen blurred as memories surfaced. Sarah's first dive with me. Her initial wonder at the underwater world. Her determination to become a professional. "I want to be worthy of you," she'd said back then. "Want us to be a real team." "Commander," Thompson's gravelly voice pulled me back to the surface. "Your call on this. I've got contacts in the Coast Guard's Criminal Investigation Division. One word from you, and we can have a surprise inspection." "Negative." I shook my head, muscle memory from countless missions taking over. "This is still a family matter. First, I need to confront Sarah. Give her one chance to explain herself." "Dad, you can't seriously think she'll—" Ryan's voice trailed off when he caught my expression. "Hit the showers." I squeezed his shoulder. "You're bunking with the Thompsons tonight. Tomorrow." The words tasted like salt water. "Tomorrow we clean house." After Ryan left, I unlocked my gun safe, bypassing the weapons to reach for an old portfolio. Facility documentation, contracts, licenses, all registered solely in my name. The one precaution I'd insisted on 15 years ago. "This is your vision," Sarah had said then. Your responsibility, your risk. Sir, Thompson lingered by the door like a safety diver monitoring a deep dive. Running solo might not be the best play here. These aren't weekend warriors we're dealing with. Remember our cardinal rule. I verified the documentation was complete. Never abandon your dive buddy, even after betrayal. First, you surface together. Maybe there's a reason we don't understand yet. I dialed Sarah's number. The ring stretched out like decompression stops, necessary pauses before surfacing from the depths. She answered with a slight tremor in her voice that gave away her stress level. We need to talk. My tone remained professional, detached. Meet me at the old boathouse by Crystal Lake. Remember? Where we ran our first training dives. 1 hour. Sweetheart, wouldn't it be better at home? I could prepare dinner. We could discuss this calmly. The boathouse, Sarah. Just us. Like old times. A heartbeat of hesitation. All right. 1 hour. I hung up and studied the framed photo on the wall. Our first instructor certification class. Young, eager faces. Sarah in the center, proudly displaying her C card. Everything felt genuine then, or was I just too blind to see? Thompson? I turned to my friend. Stay on comms. If you don't hear from me in 2 hours, execute contingency protocols, and watch over Ryan. Any commander, he snapped to attention, old habits dying hard. Just watch your six. Something feels off about this meet. I descended to the locker room, where I'd geared up for countless dives. My old Navy SEAL combat knife still rested in its drawer, a talisman that had seen me through every critical mission. I slipped it into my jacket, not as a threat, but as a reminder of who I was. Pre-dive checklist, I muttered, starting the Jeep. Verify equipment, calculate depth, monitor air supply. And most importantly, be ready for unexpected currents. The road to Crystal Lake snaked through pine forests, climbing into the coastal mountains. This was where Sarah and I had started everything. Trained our first students, dreamed about the school's future. Now it would witness either reconciliation or termination of our story. The old boathouse emerged from the twilight, a weathered 2-story structure with its own dock and equipment shed. How many joyful moments had we shared here? Student certifications, campfire celebrations, planning sessions for the future. I killed the engine, checking my watch. 10 minutes until the rendezvous. A gust of wind carried cigarette smoke from the dock. Someone had been there recently. Sarah never smoked. She hadn't come alone. Typical Mike, always had a backup plan. I pulled out my phone, texting Ryan one last time. Remember the diver's prawn directive. Never dive solo. Always have a contingency plan. And trust your training, even in murky water. Footsteps creaked inside the boathouse. Time to begin the most challenging dive of my career. The boathouse interior reeked of betrayal, a toxic blend of Sarah's Channel No. 5 and Mike's Marlboro Reds. 15 years ago, we'd sat around the stone fireplace here, mapping out our dream. Sarah sketching training pool layouts on graph paper, Mike brainstorming certification programs, and I believe we were building something permanent, something that would outlast us all. They waited in the great room. Sarah perched nervously on a weathered Adirondack chair, Mike sprawled on the leather couch like he owned the place. The fireplace crackled with burning documents, covering tracks. Through the panoramic windows overlooking the lake, I spotted a sleek Boston whaler. Definitely not standard diving school inventory. Honey. Sarah jumped up, arms outstretched for an embrace I sidestepped. Fear flickered across her features. She recognized this expression. She'd seen it during my deployment debriefs when I described compromised operations. She'd always pressed for those stories, fascinated by the unwritten code of special operations. Sit down, my voice carried the calm of deep water. Let's discuss the cache in the cave system. The smuggling operation you're running under my credentials. Come on, old man, Mike smirked, lighting another Marlboro. His casual disregard for the sacred space, ashing directly onto the hardwood floors, screamed contempt for our shared history. Did you really think legitimate dive training could fund state-of-the-art facilities? Times changed. Either you adapt and profit, or you stagnate and sink. I studied him, searching for traces of the man I'd known. Top graduate from BUD/S training, my partner through countless high-risk operations. The one who'd sworn the SEAL code meant something. Instead, I saw a stranger, manicured nails, Rolex submariner, eyes dead as a shark's. Profit? The word tasted bitter. You call betraying your oath adapting. Using my school as a criminal front. For God's sake, Jack. Sarah's diamond bracelet, new, matching the ones from their surveillance photos, caught the firelight. Such dramatic language, betrayal, criminal, we're just facilitating special deliveries. Everyone benefits, nobody gets hurt. Everyone? I glanced at the wall photo. Our first instructor class graduation. Young faces brimming with purpose. Sarah in the center, clutching her certification like the Medal of Honor. What about our students? The ones who believed in what we taught. They're well compensated, Mike stood, striding to a wet bar. He grabbed my prized Macallan 25, a gift from my SEAL team commander. Very well compensated, and those wanting more involvement, they're taken care of too. He met the mercenaries, former special operators he'd recruited for underwater ops. Professional warriors who'd sold their skills to the highest bidder. Traders cut from the same cloth as him. And Ryan? His name hung between us like a depth gauge reading zeros. Pull bro up. Sarah avoided my gaze. Learn that financial security matters more than your outdated principles. Mike's posture suddenly shifted to combat ready, his eyes hardening. Let's cut the BS, Commander. You think your clean record and training protocols paid for our hyperbaric chamber? The mixed gas systems, the rebreathers, running a alleged operation costs serious money. Permits, inspections, greasing the right palms. So that's the play. I rose slowly, combat instincts humming like a well-tuned rebreather, selling out my reputation, the credibility I built with blood and sweat. Stand down, Mike's voice carried that familiar command presence, honed through years of special operations. Stand down and listen. We got a major transaction tonight. Life-changing money. You can still be part of this, get your fair share, or what happened next moved with the speed of a triggered depth charge. I lunged forward, targeting his solar plexus, but Mike had anticipated the move. Block, side-step counter, his elbow connected with devastating precision. The impact drove the air from my lungs like a blown O-ring at depth. Getting rusty, Commander, he taunted, evading my follow-up strike. His movements mirrored my own training. Years of joint operations evident in every dodge and weave. For God who scored highest in close quarters combat. Who set the record at damn neck. I pressed the attack, but he read me like a dive computer. Special operations conditioning, countless hours in the combat pool. Everything I'd taught him now worked against me. Maybe it was the Arctic deployment fatigue, or perhaps the emotional devastation of betrayal had compromised my edge. Sarah, start the boat. He barked, deflecting another strike. We're running hot. Through my peripheral vision, I caught her blur of motion toward the door, clutching what looked like an operations folder. Then Mike's fist connected with surgical precision, and my world exploded like a ruptured high-pressure line. Nothing personal, Commander, his voice filtered through the haze, carrying a hint of genuine regret. But your Boy Scout ethics don't fit in today's game. Too inflexible. The final strike sent me into darkness, deeper than any night dive. Before consciousness faded, I glimpsed them rushing toward the whaler, moving with the urgency of operators missing their extraction window. Sarah's voice drifted back. The buyer won't wait. This is our one shot at the big leagues. Awareness returned with a bite of cold. I was sprawled on the hardwood, evening breeze cutting through the open door. My temples throbbed like nitrogen narcosis, jaw feeling like I'd taken a hit from a propeller. The clock showed I'd been down about an hour. Outside, dusk painted the lake in shades of tactical advantage, the precise conditions we'd used for night training exercises. I dragged myself to the fireplace. Among the ashes, one partially burned document caught my eye. Coordinates, timestamps, and a figure that looked like a Defense Department budget. The score of a lifetime. That's what they'd planned. Something massive enough to justify burning every bridge. Friendship, family honor. My phone lay under the couch, must have slipped loose during the engagement. Time to alert Thompson, brief Ryan. They'd need my expertise, my intimate knowledge of these waters, because their plan, however well crafted, had a critical vulnerability. They didn't know all the underwater features. Didn't know the secrets I'd kept for contingency operations. You were right about one thing, Mike, I muttered, heading for my vehicle. I'm inflexible. Inflexible enough to shut down your operation before you turn my school into a criminal enterprise. The engine caught first try, like the machine sensed operational urgency. 15 clicks to base, where my son and loyal XO waited. 15 minutes to formulate a response plan. Because somewhere in the gathering darkness, a major transaction was about to give the traders their golden parachute. Pre-dive checklist, I whispered our old operational mantra, pushing the accelerator. This descent's going to be extreme. Just the kind of high-risk operation we used to live for, right, Mike? Headlights carved through the deepening gloom. Out there, two traders prepared for what they thought would be their crowning achievement. They'd calculated everything: timing, location, operational details. But they'd forgotten the first rule of combat diving: you never truly know what lurks in the depths, especially when those depths are home territory for your former commanding officer. Northern marker, depth 130, current running northwest. Thompson's voice crackled through the tactical comm with SEAL precision. Target vessel just past the checkpoint. 2 minutes to mission start. I ran through a final gear check. Years of Spec Ops had hardened the ritual into muscle memory. The Kirby Morgan hardsuit felt like a second skin, twin tanks charged to max PSI. My K-bar tactical knife a reassuring presence on my hip. The same blade that had seen me through every critical mission since BD/S. Visual confirmation, Ryan whispered from the bridge of our offshore patrol vessel. Night vision optics trained on the target zone. The Rent is vousing with a mega yacht near the old lighthouse. Just like you predicted, Dad. I nodded grimly. The transfer location was tactically sound. Deep water pocket, radar shadow from coastal surveillance, and most importantly, an underwater current system that only locals were supposed to understand, or thought they understood. Strike team in position, Thompson reported. Awaiting your go code. Sir, reconsider letting us send in backup. You're diving into a hostile situation. Negative. I secured my final equipment check. This is personal. Besides, they're expecting a team, not a solo operator. Ryan looked up from the FLIR display. Dad, be careful. Mike's still one of the best technical divers on the eastern seaboard. I know, son, I gripped his shoulder. But he forgot the prime directive of combat diving: never betray your swim buddy. Ever. The water embraced me like an old friend turned enemy, cold and dark as betrayal itself. 130 feet down, visibility under 15 feet, and somewhere below, Mike was preparing to receive high-value cargo from the yacht. I moved like a ghost through the water column, using the current to mask my approach. 15 years of instructor experience combined with decades of special operations, everything channeled into this moment. My light beam caught the first container descending on a guideline from the yacht. Then I saw him. Mike, in full tactical dive gear, directing the operation with hand signals. His movements were precise, professional, showing why he'd been our top technical diving graduate. But now those skills served a darker purpose, violating everything we'd stood for. I waited until he secured the container's rating. Timing had to be perfect. At this step, mistakes weren't an option. His light beam swept the water, momentarily blinding me, but I was already committed to the attack. The first strike caught him off guard. He clearly hadn't expected another diver at this step. But Mike hadn't earned his reputation by being easily surprised. His reaction was instant: roll, counter-strike, his elbows seeking my regulator. Even through the hardsuit, the impact resonated like a hull breach. Through our masks, I caught his eyes, cold, calculating, combat-ready. We engaged in a lethal underwater ballet among the cargo containers. Each movement could be our last. One equipment failure at this step meant a one-way ticket to the surface. One misplaced strike, regulator knocked loose. One wrong move, suit integrity compromised. And below us in the darkness, the current that kept secret waited patiently. I just needed to maneuver him into position. Mike clearly had the physical advantage. His strikes came with precision timing, each one a reminder of our countless training sessions. The tactical dive knife in his hand flashed like street almost fire, forcing me to execute a desperate evasive maneuver. He was hurting me, using the containers as cover, confident in his superior position. I let him think he had the upper hand. Took a hit, then another. Feigned disorientation, began a seemingly panicked retreat, deeper and deeper, away from the yacht's safety lights, toward where the cold current rose from the abyss like a liquid ambush, creating an underwater river powerful enough to overwhelm even experienced combat divers. Give it up, Commander. His voice, through the underwater comm system, carried that smug certainty of someone who thinks they've won. You're too old for this level of op. His blade finally found its mark, slicing along my ribs, reaching the hardsuit's outer layer. The 43-degree water invaded instantly, but I suppressed a smile. Blood in the water. Exactly what I needed. Right here, right now. That's when he felt it. The current, sudden and overwhelming, caught us both. I saw the realization dawn in his eyes behind his tactical mask. He'd walked right into my trap. He lunged for the guideline, but I was ready. One strike to the solar plexus, his grip loosened. A second hit, his knife became mine. Who's too old for what, Mike? I drew his blood with a precise cut to the forearm, watching it create abstract patterns in the dark water. Forgot what I taught you. Never underestimate an old seal, especially one who knows every underwater canyon in these waters. The current pulled us further from the yacht's safety. I could see the panic building behind his faceplate. He realized the operation was compromised, that no backup would reach us in time. That's when they arrived. Tigers, 3 bull sharks, drawn by the blood and the vibrations of our combat. Their silhouettes materialized from the murk like living torpedoes. I'd known they'd come. This area, this season, they always patrolled these depths, hunting. A few kicks brought me to my fallback position, a narrow crevice in the underwater cliff face that only I knew about. A hardened position where I could weather any storm. But Mike lost his Spec Ops school. Instead of going still, he shot upward, trying to escape the predators. Classic rookie mistake. Sudden movement only triggered their hunting instinct. I watched it unfold like a training video in slow motion. The lead shark banking into attack position, its body flexing for the strike, Mike frantically reaching for his backup signaling device. The water around him turned crimson. Even through the hardsuit and comm system, I heard his primal scream, not through his regulator, but a deep soul howl of pure terror. The second shark approached from starboard, the third from port. Perfect predator tactics, refined through millions of years of evolution. From my defensive position, I observed the scene with the clinical detachment of a combat veteran who'd seen death in all its forms. No remorse, just the cold understanding that this was how traitors met their end. Dorsal fins cut through the water, pale bellies flashed in the darkness, and the current carried the red mist further out to sea, like a final salute to a man who'd forgotten the SEAL team motto, "Never abandon your swim buddy." The tactical comm crackled to life. "Commander, target vessel attempting emergency departure. Rules of engagement." "Take them." I pressed my hand against the breach in my suit. "Full tactical response. Have Coast Guard assets standing by." I began my ascent, maintaining strict decompression protocols. Even now, I wouldn't violate the fundamental rules of diving. My mind drifted to the ironies of fate. Mike and I had started together, learned the ropes at BUD/S, dedicated our lives to saving others. Now the depths had claimed him, not as a hero, but as a traitor. When I surfaced on the patrol vessel's dive platform, the operation was in full swing. Coast Guard cutters had the yacht surrounded, tactical teams were extracting suspects in flex cuffs and Sarah. Sarah sat on the deck of their Boston whaler, staring into nothing. Her eyes held the hollow look of someone who'd lost everything: husband, lover, future. "Dad." Ryan rushed to assist with my gear removal. "You're wounded." "Just a breach." I winced as the salt air hit the gash. "Had worsened BUD/S training." "The sharks?" Thompson asked quietly, offering the med kit. I nodded, gazing at the dark water. Somewhere down there, at 130 feet, lay what remained of a man I once called brother. A man who'd forgotten the core principle: a diver's honor matters more than any payday. "You know, Ryan worked on my wound with professional efficiency, his hands steady like a seasoned corpsman. I finally understand why you always said our principles matter more than our skills." "That's right, son," I gripped his shoulder. "Because when you're at depth, surrounded by darkness and freezing water, principles are your only reliable compass heading." Dawn broke over the bay, painting the water in shades of blood and gold. City lights twinkled on the horizon, and seagulls began their morning patrol. This day had fundamentally altered our school, our family, our lives. But I knew we'd overcome, because some things transcend money and success: honor, loyalty, and a father's love for his son, which runs deeper than any betrayal. The prison infirmary reeked of industrial disinfectant and shattered dreams. I sat across from Sarah, studying her gaunt face, lifeless eyes, and the streaks of gray in her once perfect hair. The stump below her right ankle remained hidden under hospital blankets, a grotesque reminder of that final night when her world imploded. I remembered every detail: Sarah, cornered on the yacht's deck, wearing that designer dress bought with smuggling money, her eyes darting between the approaching tactical team in the dark water, her executive makeup streaked with spray and tears. "Freeze! Hands where we can see them!" The tactical team shouted, but she already made her choice. In the harsh glare of the searchlights, her figure maintained that cover model grace. Even then, she remained the sophisticated woman who'd grown addicted to the spotlight. Jimmy Choo stilettos, salon perfect hair, $1,000 manicure, all the trappings she'd betrayed us for. Cruel irony, those same stilettos, symbols of her hunger for luxury, sealed her fate. She jumped, aiming for the water's darkness, but her heel caught in the deck rail. Her scream of terror was lost in the engine roar. The yacht's crew trying to evade capture, its propellers starting to spin. The spray, the scream, blood in the water. And that sickening sound. Bones meeting marine-grade steel. When they pulled her out, her socialite facade had shattered completely. The Versa's cocktail dress was reduced to bloody rags. Her collection of Cartier jewelry lost to the depths. And her right leg? The trauma surgeons later said she was lucky. A few inches higher, and survival wouldn't have been an option. I remember her screams in the medevac chopper, not from pain. The morphine had kicked in. But from the realization that she'd never wear those designer heels again. Never walk the country club galas that had become her obsession. Never be the trophy wife she'd reimagined herself as. Her first words in the emergency room weren't "I'm sorry" or "How's Ryan?" She asked, "Will I still be able to wear Louboutins?" That question revealed everything. The emptiness of her soul, her warped priorities. When the orthopedic surgeon explained that prosthetics weren't compatible with high heels, she spent 3 days in hysterics, refusing medication and nutrition. Now, watching her diminished form in the prison medical wing, I saw how this trauma had transformed her inside and out. The polished socialite who dreamed of mega yachts and rodeo drive shopping sprees had become a shadow, learning to navigate life on crutches. Her hands, once adorned with Van Cleef and Arpels bracelets, were calloused from aluminum supports. Her eyes held something new, the true cost of vanity. "Ryan asked about you." I placed an envelope of photos on the bedside table. "Wants to understand why you did it." She turned toward the window, where steel bars fractured the daylight like broken promises. 15 years. They gave me 15 years. Plenty of time to contemplate my reasons. Were there any? I pulled out an old photograph. The three of us at the school's opening, radiant with possibilities. Were they worth all this? Tears tracked down her hollow cheeks. Poor Mike. His bones scattered across the seafloor. Ryan will never call me mom again, and I can't even walk properly. All for money we never got. No, I shook my head. Not for money. For betrayal. Money comes and goes, Sarah. But honor, that's a one-time deal. Like family. A photo of Ryan sat on her nightstand, from his first certification dive. A 15-year-old boy beaming through his mask with pure joy. That smile was gone now, perhaps permanently. He's enrolled in the Naval Academy. I stood, sensing the conversation's end. Going for the combat diving program. Says he wants to prove the family name still stands for something in the community. How's the school? Her eyes finally met mine. Operating. Thompson and I recruited new instructors, rebranded as Divers Honor Academy. After what happened, our application rates tripled. They say if a school can survive that kind of betrayal, it must teach something worth learning. I placed another envelope on the table. Divorce papers and termination of parental rights. The DA says it'll help reduce your sentence. Jack. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Know what's truly devastating? I paused at the door. Not the betrayal, not the stolen money, not even Mike's death. It's when Ryan asked, "Dad, did Mom always lie to us? Or was there a time when she really loved us?" I had no answer. Do you? Her sobs echoed off the medical ward's walls as I walked out. In the corridor, the corrections officers waited. 2 stern-faced guards with restraints. In an hour, they'd transfer her to the Federal Women's Correctional Facility in Danbury. I stepped outside into the drizzle. Thompson waited in our department SUV, reviewing applications for the next certification course. How'd she look? He asked without looking up. Like someone who bet everything on black and watched the wheel land on red. I started the engine. Her choice, her consequences. The coastal highway curved along the shoreline. Through the rain's veil, our facility's silhouette emerged. The new flag snapped in the wind, displaying our revised insignia. A Mark V diving helmet with the motto, "Honor above all." You know, Thompson set aside the paperwork. I was thinking. Maybe in 15 years, when she's released. No, I shook my head. Some things can't be salvaged. You can't reassemble shattered trust. Not when the pieces cut too deep. Ahead loomed the Naval Academy where Ryan was forging his path. My son, who chose to honor our legacy despite everything. Not for glory or profit, but for the principles his mother had abandoned. Let's move, I accelerated. Ryan's got his first night ops training. Need to be there for the briefing. The rain intensified, turning the world into a watercolor of grays and blues. Somewhere in that prison medical ward, the woman I'd once loved mourned her destroyed life. and I thought about how our children often pay the steepest price for their parents' moral failures. How some lessons strengthen us, even when they come at an unbearable cost. 2 months later, I stood at the equipment locker, preparing for another training dive. Ryan's certification class had just completed their final exercises, all passed with exceptional marks. As I checked the regulators, something caught my eye. An old logbook, Sarah's handwriting on the cover. Inside, her final entry read, "Maybe the real betrayal wasn't the smuggling or the affair. Maybe it was forgetting why we started this school, not for profit, but for purpose." Jack understood that. I lost sight of it somewhere between the first designer bag and the last guilty kiss. By the time you read this, I'll have paid the price in blood, in freedom, and in the loss of everything that truly mattered. I closed the book and locked it away with the other artifacts of our shared past. Through the classroom window, I watched Ryan leading his first buddy team through pre-dive checks. His movements were precise, his instructions clear, every inch a professional instructor. The future stretched before us like an uncharted dive site, full of challenges, but navigable with the right principles as our compass. Because in the end, that's what separates the true professionals from the pretenders, not their gear or their skills, but their unwavering commitment to the fundamental truths of their calling. "Ready for the advanced night dive course?" Ryan called out, his voice carrying the same command presence I'd had at his age. "Always ready," I replied, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility and pride. "Just remember?" "I know, Dad," he smiled, checking his backup regulator. Honor's like oxygen at depth. You don't realize how essential it is until it's gone. Above us, seagulls wheeled against the darkening sky, and the eternal tide pulled at the harbor's edges. Another day of training awaited, another chance to pass on the legacy of what it truly means to be not just a diver, but a guardian of principles that run deeper than any ocean. The end.